It's your time now. I think that has an exclamation mark. I love concepts. I love frameworks. I love learning and content. It's your time now has a lot to do with that we take on responsibility. It's great. It's fascinating. Well, there's times in my life where I didn't feel like that, where it's like, why should I bother? I mean, why me? Why again? Come on, can't be that all hell unites against me. It can't be that all nature is against us. It can't be that we have all these obstacles at home, at work. Why is it so hard? Don't know if you've ever felt like that, but I felt like that at times. I want to share with you when I felt like this. Kai, our first child, was born. It was a son. And we had another son and a daughter. We have 3 children. Kai was our first child, is our first child. The first 4 weeks with Kai were just bliss. Probably the best time of my life ever. Everything was perfect. Home, health, child, family, everything was perfect. One day, after the first month, one day further, he had blood in his nappy. I asked myself, okay, why is it us? What's going on? We went to the doctor. The doctor said, do not go home, go straight to the hospital. So we thought, okay, we'll go straight to the hospital. What were they going to do? They drilled in a many-hour surgery through his so hardened kidney to put in a kidney catheter to release his kidney, which had a very strong reflux, and it was already 80% destroyed. They couldn't believe that he wasn't crying all the time. And it was really hard for us, not knowing if he was going to survive, if he's going to become a dialysis patient, not knowing what was going to happen. We were a young family. We didn't know nothing about life. I mean, we were like as blasé about life as you could be, being young. So we went, did what you had to do, get some understanding and find out the right hospital, the right doctors. And we found one doctor. That doctor, to me, is the example of live with intent, of having intent. The gentleman is called Dr. Kamran, and he did not have a lot of ego. His interest was not only his brand, and his interest was just to serve and to make sure he could give the best to our son. He did surgery on him again, and every surgery meant being in the hospital 6 weeks full time. Oh yeah, I just borrowed 1.2 million from investors. I gotta run this company. What in the world am I gonna do now? Having to be in the hospital for 6 weeks. I don't know how many surgeries are gonna be. What am I gonna do now? I just started my MBA. How am I gonna do those classes when I wanna be in the hospital and have to like feed the family and still give seminars? Why is he sick anyways? I mean, what did we do wrong? All these questions appeared, and we didn't have any answers. But we had Dr. Kamran, and to me, human examples is what gives me fire, my fire within to understand principles. And Dr. Kamran performed surgery once, again. Every surgery was about 6 weeks full time, and again, and again, again. And again, and again, one more time, and again. We went in again, and one more time, and yet another 6 weeks, and another 6 weeks, and yes, another 6 weeks. We went in again, did another surgery, another surgery, another surgery, another one, and another one, and another 6 weeks, and another 6 weeks. And so it went on. While I was sitting there thinking, teaching principles? Living with intent? That's a question mark for me, not an exclamation mark. I mean, how should that work? But then I understood one thing. I understood Dr. Kamran. For him, it wasn't about what's in it for me. For him, the question wasn't, do I have transferable skills for other careers? I mean, there I really became very appreciative of medical doctors. I mean, some have great options and make tremendous careers, but a lot of them do not have many transferable skills. They focus for so many years on serving the patients, and that's what they do, that you wonder. Dr. Kamran, I could not believe it. Every time we did surgery, at 7 in the morning, there we went with a 4-week-old child, right, at the beginning, handing it over into a warm towel with him, he in white gummy boots, you know, white clothes, his gloves and everything, taking the child in the warm blanket, which was just 4 weeks old. I didn't know that he had 4 hours of commute every morning to come to the hospital. I did not know that his wage was a fraction of what it should be. And I didn't know of his family situation then and how hard life was for him. But he was there, he was on time. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, he did his duty with his full heart. I learned to appreciate duty then. I learned to appreciate to just shut up and get on with it. That's what I did with all those questions back then. It was Dr. Kamran when I was thinking like, why should I do this MBA lecture on a Saturday? I was like, shut up and do what Dr. Kamran does. If you can drive for 4 hours to the hospital, you can do your little thing there for 3 hours. And whenever I ask myself, do I want to go and travel somewhere to give a seminar? I'm like, hey, if he can be in his gummy boots at 7 in the morning, yeah, I can give a seminar at 9. Yeah. So I felt that there is some great power in actually living up to duty and commitment and having that and really fulfilling that. That inspired us for more than 10 years. We went through an odyssey of over 10 years with all 3 of our children with a lot of health issues. And that kept me going and kept us going. It had, however, 2 downsides. There's 2 downsides to it. When living with intent with an exclamation mark is all you do, right? And commitment and duty is all you do. There's 2 things that will enter your life. That did enter my life. And I've seen with quite some clients that it had entered their lives. One is that being exhausted or being chronically exhausted becomes the normal state of being. That being overwhelmed is normal. That the chronic state of being overwhelmed is the new normal. Many times when I coach leaders and individual contributors, and they're like, I don't know if I want my job. Should I change the industry? Well, I probably should change companies. Well, life's so hard in our industry, and you know, maybe I should do something completely new. And they go through all these questions. Many times we have these questions, it's because we're exhausted. And it's always a surprise to me when we step back and we relax and we find our personal equilibrium again, when we're in our own zone again, in our own water again, that all of a sudden what we so hated, we really love. I've had that just 4 weeks ago with another client. She was so convinced that she hates her job that she's been doing for 17 years and that she's had it. After the summer vacation and the 2 subsequent coaching sessions, it was like, oh, I love my job. I'm gonna stay there the next 17 years. Many times we slip into this exhaustion and into chronic overwhelm where it's really important to watch out for ourselves. That's been one of my weaknesses and the thing I found, because trying to operate and feeding the family and doing all that in that emergency situation, I became used to that. And I had to learn to actually make sure I take care of myself and ensure that I'm not overwhelmed as a chronic state. The second challenge I slipped into was being over-responsible. I don't know if this happened to you. And if that's something you find yourself sometimes in, but this, this automatic magneto on 100%, yes, give me your hot potato. Yes, give me your problem. And it's like, whatever problem the organization have, I'm responsible, I'll do it. Before you know it, you become the bottleneck. It's maybe intellectual stimulating, maybe it's fun and it's powerful, but at the end of the day, you slow everything down, you become the bottleneck. That's one of the pitfalls I fell into. I have to be very clear every week when I meet with my team that the responsibility and the power is with them, and I have to be very clear with myself that some things I don't like, but I better be quiet, and I make sure it continues. And I'm always amazed what they get done, which I would never even have the time to start doing. But it's great to actually get out of over responsibility and overwhelm. To me, they're like twin sisters, like twin brothers, right? If you got the one, you're probably going to have the other as well. And it's such a release, and I've seen magic work with clients as they start to get out of overwhelm, start to get out of being over-responsible. Next to the great example of people and Dr. Kamran that inspires me and still inspires me every day, I love concepts and I love frameworks because they've helped me a lot. And one of them is principles. I mean, I've been teaching principles for over 20 years. I love principles because they're changeless. No matter how crazy our world is, principles are going to be the same. They're like lighthouses, right? I mean, they do give us help when we navigate. So when we navigate the ship back, if we're going to have a problem, we need some kind of lighthouses, navigation equipment to help us in this world if it becomes very turbulent. Next to principles, the thing that has emerged the last years was the concept of mindset. And the strongest concept of mindset I've experienced is that of intent. Being intentful, having intent. To me, the definition of intent is something that you are or that you do flows out of your heart. That to me is intent. That's like if you look at a big sea vessel that's navigating, it's like the diesel engine, the diesel aggregate or the nuclear aggregate, that energy that moves that big vessel. That is intent. So intent is so important because it transcends everything we do. But what's intent worth if you're in a problem, if you really have a challenge? I never forget this situation. What do you do when you're really on an emergency? Your engine is on fire. You're in a ship, you're in a plane, you're flying, and all of a sudden that oil tank starts burning. The fuel starts leaking, and you have to crash land that plane. At that moment, something else counts. It's not just a concept. And you ask yourself, what do I do now? It's actually not even conscious thinking, you're actually reacting. You better be reacting because you've been trained before. One of the best trainers that helped me in situations like that was Henrik. Henrik was my safety pilot for 5 years. I flew with him to Brussels, Vienna, Munich, all over Europe on a weekly basis. He was a funny guy because he always had time, and I was so excited to fly, and my head was always somewhere else, so I made sure that I have a safety pilot always with me, so I was safe. We were in Vienna, we had this great event with leaders, over 200 participants. Next morning, a smaller circle, all great, super high energy, cruise back to the airport, and I'm like, great, we can still hit Frankfurt and do something that day. And I'm arriving, and Henrik's like walking through the grass, at the airport, taking a stroll, and I'm thinking, man, this guy has a charmed life. And I'm coming to him, I'm like, hey, Henrik, we gotta go. He's like, no, I'm doing very important work here. I'm just walking beyond the runway. I'm like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm walking beyond the runway. Let me teach you something, Thomas. This is your takeoff spot. You're gonna take off with that turbine. You're gonna fly into that sky. If something goes wrong in the first 2 seconds, you have no choice other than to go 45 degrees right, 45 degrees left, and do a forced landing. Forced landing means you're gonna have to take whatever comes. Have you taken a walk in that grass? to the right, and the left. Do you know what's in there? If there is a building, a car, a cow, a fence, you better know. Henrik taught me, and I've done it ever since, to take 2 hours, walk beyond the runway, and find out where the cows, the fences, the cars, the agricultural vehicles sit and stand and lie, so when that turbine stops, you know where to land. Sadly, I've needed that a few times in my life. But not just in airplanes. Much more often, I needed that principle in real life. Knowing how to prepare if things don't work out. Knowing what to do if things aren't as great as we planned them. Although our intent was clear and our heart was pure and we wanted it. Making sure that we're prepared for what could be 45 degrees right and left. Because we don't just have friends. We don't just have people that have the same mission. So there's 2 invitations I'd love to leave with you. 2 invitations I want to give you to take home. 1, don't find yourself, but completely use yourself in your intent. I think the greatest return on investment of your time is to give everything you have into your intent, because that's what you're all about. And the second one is to be very strategic in walking beyond the runway. Not to ever be naive that things are going to work out automatically, but to make sure that when they don't, things do get on fire, things do not work out, you know exactly where to go. And when you know that, things will work out. Live with intent is not a sentence with a question mark for me anymore, like it was many times. To me today, it has an exclamation mark. Live with intent. Thank you.